Hello teachers, I am going to be walking you through how to write your PSMs and update your 1069s in order to help out and get your Tier 2 students documented. So first off, what is a PSM? Well, a PSM, or in other words, a problem-solving model, is what we use to keep track of students that are Tier 2 for RTI, or Response to Intervention, which is now the MTSS. Now, we do documentation for Tier 2 for our PSMs at the beginning of the year, BOI, and the middle of the year, MOI, with the only exception being that kindergarteners are not entered into Tier 2 at the beginning of the year. We don't enter officially, but we do obviously use the data to keep track. Now, for all other grade levels, 1st through 5th grade, everyone needs to write a PSM for anyone under 21. I'll show you about that in just a second. So, at the beginning of the year, you were given a list of students that were already under the 21. These were students that were already identified as Tier 2. These students require a PSM for monitoring. You need to make sure that you have them. We'll go over that in just a second. Now, for anybody who needs a refresher on how to find your under 21 percentile, we're going to go ahead and come here into MAP. We're going to go to our MAP growth reports. And once this loads, you're going to go into your class report. And this is going to be the fastest way you're going to see your whole class at one time so you can see who is under the 21. So now I have my report loaded. I've scrolled down and now I am looking at math here for this class. You can see here that I only have 2 students that would be considered under the 21, which I'm talking about percentile. So I have student 1 and student 2 here that I would need to write a PSM for in order to document their Tier 2 progress or lack thereof. Now, let's say student A is a dyslexia student, a SPED student, or a student already in Tier 3. You do not need to write a PSM for that student. If student 2 is a regular Tier 2 student who is not in dyslexia, not in special education, and is not being seen by Miss Etheridge for Tier 3, then you need to make sure you are writing a PSM. If I continue to scroll down and look at reading, I'm going to look here to see who's under the 21 again. Oh, this student right here at the top is the same as student 1 in math. So this student needs a reading and a math PSM. I cannot combine PSMs into one. I also see that I have another student here that I would need to write a PSM for. However, this student is in dyslexia, special education, or Tier 3, so I do not need to write a PSM for that student. Where can I find a template or example of what a PSM looks like? Here in our Classical Center at Bile Shared Drive, you can click into RTI, MTSS, and you can see here that you have a lot of resources. The first place we're going to look right here is documentation. In documentation, you are going to see multiple PSMs. These 3 files up here at the top are all PSMs. You have some 1069 examples and some logs. You do not need to worry about these at this time. Let's go ahead and look at how I would fill out a PSM for reading for any student in kindergarten through 5th grade. So now that I have opened this, I need to make sure that I go to File and Make a Copy. If you do not make a copy, you will be typing out and everyone will be able to see the documentation that you are writing out for your student. So click Make a Copy. You can save this under your own drive by just clicking the back arrow till you get to your drive and starting your own RTI or MTSS folder. and this is where I will place the copy. Your copy will automatically open and load, and you can see that it says copy so that you can begin. Start by filling out your student's ID number, name, the date that you are planning on starting, meeting, or beginning your Tier 2. So that could be next week after you've met with the parents, or even the date that you are planning on meeting with the parents. Now, for a lot of you, meeting with the parents will happen during conference time. And so using this time with the parents during that conference to go over the PSM and what you're seeing in class kind of go hand in hand, and then you just let them know that you want them to continue or to begin in Tier 2. Right? So your suggestion is going to be Tier 2, and then your name. So here you are going to type an X in order to help complete the forms. Now, how do I find out some of this information? Well, first off, you use your anecdotal observations, things you're noticing, things you're seeing in class. Let's say that you realize that they're having a hard time doing summarization. Click the X here. Retelling, summarization, whatever it is that you feel like is needing to happen for that specific student. Now, another place we can find this is going back to NWEA. The first place you want to go after you've already identified which students you need to write a PSM for is you're going to come over here to Student Profile. Once you click Student Profile, you're going to find your student and find the student that you want to work with. This is a sample student profile. You will see here that you can see that this student, Sadie H. Porter, has a 200 RIT score in math and a 209 RIT score in reading. Now, when you look here in the comparisons, you can see here that they are actually in the 62nd percentile for growth and the 42nd percentile for achievement. That means that they have high growth, that they are able to retain, they are learning, they absorbed a lot, but that they are still low achievement. So 42 would be that percentile we would be debating on for if they are under the 21 or not. This student would not fall under the 21. However, if it is a Tier 2 student that I had already given you the name of, but they are not under the 21, you still need to do their PSM. So if you have a student that is showing lots of progress and lots of growth, but they were a name that I gave you at the beginning of the year, you still have to do a PSM to show that that child is making growth, to show the parents that yes, things are working and this is what we're going to continue to put into place in order to make that student successful. So here, you can see immediately in the instructional areas in reading that there are areas suggested for focus. So you would click this to get ideas from MAP for what you can use in the PSM. Now, when you click suggested area of focus, this is the page you're going to see. It's going to show you the top issues, the top skills that should be assessed, that should be attended to in order to support that student. So for instance, this student needs to distinguish facts from opinion in argumentative text. You can also see that the student needs to develop inferencing skills from literacy, nonfiction, and definitions. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to make sure you mark. And so you can also see here that in sequencing that they need to understand sequencing and directions. So I'm going to go back to the PSM and see how I mark that. So for this student, I came back and I'm going to mark inferencing and I'm going to mark sequencing. And then in looking back at those skills, I'm going to either write more or I'm going to provide explicit examples from the continuum. And I can use the continuum to show which skills I need to address. Where can I access the continuum? Of course, from MAP. Now, if you use the profile to help you with that, that's going to be the same information. So don't feel like you're stressing out by needing to go back exactly to the continuum. The continuum is just a separate tool used to help you. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you where in the continuum you can go if you'd like. So I'm here on the learning continuum, and now I'm going to click through and select the class that that child is in. I can even look for that specific child, so that way I can look at the skills necessary. All right, so now I am here in my learning continuum. Now I'm going to be looking for the student. Now, since these are all examples, it's not going to be exactly the same. However, I do want to show you what it looks like when I am looking at these skills. See how the skills and ideas look the exact same? I'm talking about setting, I'm talking about perimeter, circumference. I'm talking about developing certain types of skills for time, for area. It just depends on what you're wanting to hit with that group of students. So when I am looking at the PSM, so you can see here that I have pulled over all of the identifying sentences, identifying skills from the student profile, and now I'm just going to mark frequency and length. So if we're having issues with inferencing and sequencing, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a weekly, maybe even daily, if I feel like it's a daily issue. Depending on the grade level, it's going to be one or the other. And then how long this is, I would say that if we're having issues with inferencing and sequencing, I'm seeing this is really affecting the student. Maybe it's only some of the time, maybe it is most of the time. It just depends on how often you're seeing this type of skill affect your student. Okay. So then I'm also going to put in the student's RIT data, and I'm going to put in when this problem is occurring. So for BOY, the student's RIT data was a 209, and they were in the 42nd percentile. Now, again, even though they're not under the 21, because this was a previously tier 2 student that we may be considering exiting, that they're doing really well, I may have a conversation with mom and dad and let them know they're doing really well, but I want to keep them tier 2 at least until the middle of the year, MOI, because I want to make sure that those things are in place. It's going to be between what you believe is going to support the student, what the parents believe is going to support the student. Okay. So when is this problem occurring? Well, it's definitely occurring when she's working independently, and it's definitely occurring on independent work. So if I send anything home, it's not getting done the way it needs to get done. And I believe that if this student were able to just master, some of the basic inferencing and sequencing issues that we're having, they would be able to perform with a 70% mastery. Now, this student may be getting over 70. This student may be passing your class. Please keep in mind that if you have a student you are concerned about, you have a student that is going to possibly be a tier 3, maybe even you're recommending for SPED or 504 testing, ideally their grades should reflect your concerns about the student. So you need to make sure that if this student is someone that you're worried about and that they're not doing well, that they probably shouldn't be on A roll or B roll. And so really making sure that their abilities reflect in their grades. So the desired goal is to apply on grade level strategies to get at least 70%, but we would also like for them to maybe get to the 50th percentile. Now, for some of your students, for most of your students, you're probably going to put a 21 here. Because if they're under the 21, our goal is to get them above that. So this student specifically, because they're 42, my goal would be, let's get them up to a 50. Let's see how high we can get them. Versus a student who might be in the 7th percentile, our goal may be 21. It just depends on the student. So this right here is going to be student dependent. Now I'm going to print this off. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to put my name and sign it, and then I'm going to, when I meet with the parents, I'm going to let them do that. Then when I have this done, I'm going to give this to Miss Etheridge so she can file it away. So that way if anything were to occur in the future, let's say that this student, even though they're 42nd percentile now, let's say that in a couple of years, something doesn't click anymore and it just bombs and it starts going under the 21. We have all this documentation in place so that we can speed run them into either 504 or dyslexia and really help them get through where they need to go. So let's start the process over now. And we are now going to be looking at math. So we have math broken down into 2 categories, K2 and 3-5. Now I'm going to be doing a little bit of both just so you can see how both are done. I'm going to start with 3-5. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to open it and make a copy. I've now opened the file and I'm going to click File and go to Make a Copy. And I'm going to save this into my new MTSS folder in My Drive by clicking all the way back arrow to My Drive and then going down to MTSS. I know this has now worked because it says copy in the corner, and I can always check to see where my folder is by clicking it here and seeing, yep, it's in my MTSS drive and I see my copies. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to type in my student's ID number. I'm going to get their name. I'm going to put the date in that I'm seeing the teachers the parents and or when I'm going to be beginning working with that student. And then of course my name. So I'm going to go through the same exact steps, the same exact setup as I did going through their sample student profile. So I have pulled up this specific student's math, and so you can see here that this score is going to be really low. Okay, it's relatively low, and so if I scroll down here, I can see that this student has low growth. I would say high for this type of student, but low growth where it's 35%, and then this student is in the 7th percentile. So this student is definitely under the 21. And so in looking at this, I can also see if they're a 3rd, 4th, or 5th grader. I can also see what the projection is and that they will not pass STAR. So that might be something also to discuss with parents, or if it's just something you want for yourself. You can see here that I have 2 suggested areas of focus right now. And so I can click either of these to get that information for that student. You can see I've clicked numerical representations and suggestions, and I'm looking at this as a suggested area of focus. In doing so, I am going to notice all of the suggested things that it's saying this student should have skills worked on. So counting by 10s, 1s, 2s, and 5s within 100, identifying shapes divided into equal parts, comparing sets of objects using 10 within 10 using terms, and ordering numbers within 1,000. I can keep going down to the bottom. Read and write whole numbers within 1,000, read and write whole numbers within 20 in word form, and representing whole numbers within 120 with models. So using models is going to help being able to read and write in word form and being able to write within 1,000 as hundreds, tens, and ones, so just in standard form. These are all great skills that will help me be able to start working in the PSM. Okay, so you can see here I've already started filling it out. I grabbed a bunch of the statement sentences from the student profile over here. And I've marked a couple of things: number recognition, composing, decomposing, place values, definitely number sense. Okay. So then you're also looking here at the operations, conceptual understanding versus actual computation. So can this student do addition, subtraction, multiplication, division within, whole numbers, decimals, or fractions? So if this is this goes through 3 through 5. So if it's a 3rd grader, you may not be using all of these. If these are 5th graders, you may be using all of these. So you can either put a Y or an N, yes or no, or what I do is I just put an X saying that yes, that's where we need to work on it. And that's where we need to work on it. And so here I'm going to leave everything else blank because that student specifically is just not able to do anything else. So we are working on conceptual understanding and computation with an addition and subtraction for whole numbers. The last thing we're going to talk about is 1069s and what that means. So a 1069 is our monthly documentation. Because we're in the month of October, we should have August, September, maybe not October yet because it's at the beginning, but by the end of October, we should have October. So let's look at a sample reading. So here, we would have our review month. So I would have August, September, and October so far. And this score right here is going to be their ISIP number. This would be for the month of August. Now, I cannot edit this. I cannot do anything to it. I need to either make myself a copy or I can download this as a Microsoft Word. Your choice. Now, for the first month of August, you may not have done much with them. If you did, type it out. What did you work on with them? Did you just do review? Did you just do assessments? If you didn't do much with them, that's okay. You do want to put that there is no progress to goal because this is the first piece of data we have. Then we're in September. Notice that their score went up. I documented that their score went up 17 points. Yes, that is satisfactory because that means that they are growing. We worked on main idea, we worked on summarizing, and this is what we did in order to do that. I may be seeing the student daily. This specific student, I was only able to see Monday through Thursday for 25 minutes at a time. I may be able to see other students daily. Depends on their need. This month for October, this was their score. That means that they went down 40 points. That is unsatisfactory. We do not want to see them go down. Plus, satisfactory, minus, unsatisfactory. Very basic. I'm going to keep going up through the entire year. I'm not going to turn this document in until the end of the year. I am keeping track of this every month. So usually, when I give an ISIP, I'm probably updating this exact page as well. Now for math, we don't have monthly. We don't have actual progress monitoring for math. You may be using exit ticket. You may be using specific assessments that you're doing in class, maybe even CBAs. Here, you may not have anything between MAP and next map, so MOY score. So you may not have anything here for progress to goal for any of them. However, even if your score is blank, you still need to have what you're working on for that specific month for each student. Now, if you're doing the same exact stuff for each student, you're pulling, everybody's getting the same skills, just copy and paste your documentation.